It's been more or less about a few minutes, just 2 minutes before, 5 after. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. People rolling in, going out, wherever they need to be. But we are here. We are here now. We are recording, so no more secrets. If you're thinking about telling a secret, wait till after. But thank you all so much for being here. I am Jaden. I help organize the Bay Area chapter, but more so I've been focusing on the national side. But with all that out of the way, in the chat, there is the agenda, schemes and canons, something I'll talk about more philosophical, reactionary mode of thought. We were talking about liberalism today. And then lastly, 3.5% is not 100%. And this is to say that we are not supposed to be getting along with every single person that we come into contact with. We are definitely going to have some disagreements with people when we talk about organizing and such and having people in our community and space. We are not supposed to be having 100% full, backing of what everyone has to say because everyone's opinions are different. So let's just get right into it from the top to the bottom. This discussion right now, but before I start though, does anyone have anything they want to say? Maybe want to type in chat, get something off of your chest or whatnot. Just give you guys a little second to come off mute if you need to.
I just came in, but this is a topic that what you were talking about is kind of important to me. I'm a big history guy. I like studying history, and if history has taught us anything about organizing a left-wing movement, it's infighting is suicide. I mean, look at Germany in the 30s. Look at Spain during the Spanish Civil War. When we're too focused on fighting our own allies is when the enemy starts winning.
Oh God, yeah, well said. No point in infighting. I don't really particularly like the differences in our ideologies, but it is just what it is, the product of our shared material condition, however we perceive life. But generally, I accept the anti-capitalist left-leaning. If you're an anarchist, cool. Communist, cool. Socialist, cool. Any sort of detachment of the left, pretty cool because it is anti-capitalist. But having those finer, minute, distinct differences that we make in our conversations between two left political ideologies, it's more or less a distinction without a difference when it's talking about the movement as the community at large, the broader whole. So yes, leftist infighting is going to be the death of any space because then that brings antagonisms. Antagonisms is not community building, and then it's just a big old dumpster fire after that. So cool, great, lovely start. We're going to be talking about something a little more philosophical today. And as I like to articulate, politics is no more than just a materialization of philosophy. So the philosophy is a mode of thought. So whatever you think, right, you think there's a thought before the action. And whatever you're thinking materializes, not perfectly, not absolute does it do that. Right. When you think of something, you go ahead and materialize. It doesn't always come out, as perfectly as you would think it does. And that's the whole point of thought, right? Your thoughts live in this immaterial space, this almost perfection to your eye, to man's eye. But then when you go out and materialize your thought, the restrictions and limitations of the material condition bind such a materialization to those confining facts, right? When you throw something up in the air, it drops down. But of course, such easy examples, you would expect it to drop down. When we get into more finer, more complex ideas and notions that we discuss, we fall into this trap of this thrown schemes and this lacking of canons, in which we'll get into right now. So when I say schemes and canons, we're going to do a little bit of thought exercising, thought, brain turning, gear turning and churning to get those, brain muscles working so that we can think critically, analyze our material conditions as they are, and investigate how they come to be and what they become into. So we're going to be describing these two terms, schemes and canons, and this is the way that I articulate the world. Now, there are many different ways to say this, and this is what comes easiest to me, and hopefully that it makes sense to you as well. Schemes and canons, first and foremost, schemes. Think of schemes as a noun. Think of it as the what, right? The first bullet point. Schemes are the what. What makes this phenomena or anything here? Why does it exist? So when I say the scheme of life, what makes life? And then I break it down to this organization of your activities, the things that you do, what makes up your experience of life, your scheme, right? What makes true of your life in the ways that you live it? Because everyone lives a different life. Everyone lives different schemes. Everyone wakes up at different times in the morning. Everyone goes to different jobs. Everyone does different activities. Everyone does these different things, which makes this scheme, the what of someone's life. So think of what's as the noun, as like a person, place, or thing to establish the scenery or the scheme of someone's, in this case, life, the scheme of life. And you can apply this to any sort of phenomena. The scheme of money, what makes money? The scheme of liberalism, as we'll talk about later, what makes a liberalism? And so you have this noun in your head now as the scheme. In contrast, everything exists not just as what is thrown at us as this scheme, as what just is existing. It also exists with the canons, the becoming process, the how a thing exists. So think of this as a verb. So canons are verbs, nouns are schemes. Very easy, get this, kind of in our understanding. So canons are verbs. So instead of saying the canons of life, as we would say the scheme of life, think of canons of living. It's an action. It's what you do. It's how you become. So in the scheme of life, people just do stuff and exist, and they organize whatever activities they do throughout the day, throughout their life, any given period amount of time. Canons, however, canons describe the actions and the how of one object or one thing, entity exists as in its becoming process. So in the canons of living, we would say that a part of the canon of living is, for at least for a human, for us, is that nourishment, is that water, the subsistence. But more so than that, your psychological health, your understanding of your shared conditions at which, helps you live, right? So your canons of living are actions that an individual or something does to live. So we can also take this into the canons of striking as well. We'll probably get into that later, the last bullet point. And the canons of, debate. And it's an action. It's how you build up these phenomena and these understandings to which you observe them in the shared condition. And this is where we derive our absolute truths. This is where we derive how we can understand the material condition shared. This is how we can understand that things are and what they are not. So it gives us a pretty base, a confidence, a set of, conditions to look at, to be like, this is what it is. This is what it is not. Right? Upon the observation and relationship observed. So in the schemes and canons, and this is more so, going to your dialectics, your philosophical understandings, that objects exist. So just pick any object in your room, wherever you're at, maybe your phone in your hand or the screen, you're looking on. Everything exists as such in these two distinct states, schemes and canons, right? When you look at something, you're looking at it in throw. Everything at which it comes to you entirely, at which everything comes to you, in all of what it is becoming. So you are thrown with everything at once. You then begin to investigate its canons of how it became into your perception, or how it became into what you are perceiving in the very moment, right? So as we go back, everyone lives different lives and everyone lives different schemes. Everyone lives different, there's different jobs and such. And so we all have a different perspective of life. We all live different lives and lives, naturally, of course, we're all different individuals. But the scheme of life generally is more or less the same for every individual. The scheme of life, what makes that living, what makes that life, right? People wake up. People do that, but people wake up at different times. In the scheme of life, people still wake up. It is a law, or like constant, right? This helps us build that foundation. So everyone may wake up at different times, but people still wake up. This would be a part of the scheme of life, right? People may go to a job, or people may work, but people labor. This is a scheme of life, right? People doing their different labors and their different capacities and whatnot, that it falls within the schemes. But the scheme of life is that people labor, people wake up. We start to build a foundation of an understanding of the material conditions shared, at which we can confidently look at and observe phenomena and be like, yep, that's exactly what it is. Or on the contrary, nope, that is not what it is, right? So we analyze things in relationships, schemes, and canons. Every object itself, in itself, is filled with the being under. It's filled with parts that make the whole, right? And it's easy to understand this when you have actual things that have inner parts, right? Some things that appear like a mountain is just one big rock, but inside the mountain are different sections of rocks that make the entire mountain. So when you analyze relationships, we analyze the things that make, right, the parts that make the whole is what we're analyzing, the schemes and canons at which make those parts that make the entire whole. So when we talk about capitalism, right, we talk about capitalism and we talk about the parts at which make the whole. So it's not just capitalism, big bad boo, bad werewolf, oh my God, it's super bad. Well, yeah, but then we have to understand why, right? The scheme of capitalism, boo, bad. We don't like it. We don't like being exploited. Exploited labor, bad, boo. But the canons of capitalizing, in the ways that capitalism has to become and mature, grow into, is where we are digging into that investigation. It's that exploitation and that extraction of surplus value. It is that divvying up and that organization of private property and that organization of your privatized, labors, the extraction of your surplus values. But even more so is that delegation of that business and that business appropriation of labor. You can get all into it. But those are the canons of what, the canons of capitalizing, what makes a capitalism a capitalism, right? So we analyze these relationships. So the one relationship that we often go to in our workplaces is the boss and employee, or the employer and employee relationship. And I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with, right? Right. We're all employees. Some of us may be employers, but there's this relationship in the workplace which exists. And we can observe this through the schemes and canons. What is the scheme of an employee? Right? They are subordinate to the employer. And what is the scheme of an employer? They are the authority or power over the employee, which makes that labor appropriated, which then becomes extracted, which then becomes, that surplus value or profits for maybe not the boss directly. Your direct supervisor is not a part of the ruling class, but, in this case, your employer is like, head CEO or your director share board of Walmart or something. That is your boss, right? Your direct supervisor, your boss's boss in a big corporation, they are not bourgeois ruling class working out against you. They themselves are also in exploitive conditions because they also rely on that paycheck to, sustain the material conditions. So the schemes of an employee and an employer vary differently. So even though you think your supervisor is your boss, they're also an employee to who? Their boss, which is closer in that power structure to cause that oppression. But in a big corporation like Walmart or UPS, maybe Target, wherever it may be, your direct supervisor and boss are no more exploited than you are, right, in the entire grand scheme of the business. So we go to these schemes and canons to help us understand our material condition, right? It gives us another layer of thought to think about when we look at life. Instead of looking at life, everything is thrown at us. This is this is that. You read something on the news. Oh, this must be happening. Well, if you go fact check it. You do some investigating further. But we should always have this sort of, not entire skepticism, but an understanding that what you may see may not always be what it is. And this is where we get our canons from. How does it become? Because in the becoming process, it's very telling of what something is, right? Just because it's thrown at you, like we say freedom is good. Freedom, good. Freedom, right? Everyone has freedoms and rights and autonomy and, self-determination and whatnot, until you brand it as liberalism. And then all of a sudden, then it's like, oh, wait, hold on now. Right? This appropriation of our being and becoming from liberalism, this ignoring of their intersectionality when it comes to our struggles and our differences, right, is very apparent in the liberal ideology. So when you talk about freedoms from a liberal standpoint, you always have to ask, freedom for who? Right? This is where we get to investigate these questions further, but thrown as just the term freedom, we all have our different conceptions of what it is. And of course, we all like to have and, bridge that freedom and equality for all. It's in the ways that we do that, which makes that canon, which makes that being and becoming, what makes that, apparent value that we get to observe, that freedom. So how freedom is instilled, right? Because in white, capitalist, oppressive, imperial, colonialistic, type of world, this liberal world that we live in, it's freedom for the white capital owning individual. It's not freedom for any minority, not any freedom for, blacks or Asian. There's no freedom to the capacities at which exercised under the white capitalist system. It's freedoms for the white capital owner, generally for the capital owner, but of course we cannot, ignore the white racial aspect to that. It's oppressive nature. That's where it comes from. That's the canons of colonizing. It is a white thing to do. Now, not everything, right? Well, you see it and it's white and it's bad. Right? But we have to understand the principles at what makes it. So colonizing, boo, bad, don't like it. But we have to understand how it becomes, right? It's better help us understand. So you're not just saying, wow, that's bad. I'm seeing it. That's bad. That's like you're saying, like Trump bad. Like we can all agree that, Trump bad. Trump, Trump's no good. That's just a bad thing. And then you can say, oh, Kamala Harris no bad and you're good, right? Bernie no good or whatever. But then you have to investigate further of why that is, right? You don't have to go dig deep on why bourgeois politics are bad, but it's helpful to know and understand that. And it's also helpful to understand the next second bullet point, the reactionary mode of thought. We talked a little bit about liberalism, and now we're going to talk about a little more. And to the first bullet point, the reactionary mode of thought, the capitalist mode of thought, the predatory competitive mode of thought, right? What makes this scheme of liberalism, I believe it to be, right, through observation, is this preservation of contradiction. And this preservation of contradiction is this, call back to addressing contradictions in a Hegel style or a dialectical materialism. It is this unaddressing of the contradictions observed and experienced and there's many reasons why you would preserve contradictions. It could be tradition, it could be conservatism, it could be this, desire to stay put and be as one is comfortable. So, oh no, you're good. Right, you're good. So, but preservation of contradiction, I would say, is this core tenet, but it is a very basic, or not very, it's an aspect of this reactionary mode of thought. It's this, that is that, it is this, it is therefore bad, right? And then the individual goes out in their lives and then seeing that phenomena later, ooh, that's bad, and are unable to articulate why, right? Because they are, I would say, preserving this contradiction, this no understanding of why you are saying this is good or bad, where you're not saying this is right or wrong, correct or incorrect or whatnot, right? This preservation, this is lack of, I would say, it's anti-intellectualism. It's lack of investigating. The reactionary mode of thought is reactionary. It reacts, but there's no more upon that, right? There may be some thought behind the act, but the thought is not based in a principled understanding of why that object is. The individual only understands in the reactionary mode of thought a scheme, right? A general understanding of a scheme. What makes something is, the thrown understanding of what makes something, right? So it's like communism. Communism bad, boo, is it really, right? The Red Scare propaganda McCarthyism has, blemished the name of communism and, the communist ideologies. So we have to understand, and, it's hard to do some research on this if you don't know where to look, but knowing where to look, you can build the canons of communizing, right, in this sense, or the schemes of communism has been, foretold in this bad, boo, you won't like it, it's authoritarian dictatorship, it's when people starve, it's when bread lines, it's when no iPhone communism, right? It's this anti-intellectualism, because communism, a mode of production and a mode of thought, is working out just as capitalism is. It's just working as it does, but in the ways that it does, in the canons of capitalizing. So whereas capitalism does so through privatization of the mode of production, communism and socialism, of course, work out in the publication of the mode of production as the antithesis of the current mode of production and as our current way of doing things. Socialism looks at capitalism, critiques it, and be like, no, we're not going to do it that way because this causes inequality. Right, this extraction and this exploitation of labor causes inequality. It's what makes people work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and still not be able to afford anything, all right, let alone rent, housing, which should be universally, provided for. But it is this lack of being able to take care of yourself even though you have labored. This itself is a contradiction. This is a preserved contradiction, right? Capitalist mythology will tell you to work really hard, and when you work hard, you're rich, and yet there are millions and millions of people in America who work hard and still do not receive the labor at which they are owed. They are struggling, even though 60 hours a week are being contributed to an enterprise which produces this inequality. It's capitalism's whole riddle of the contradictions, right? Is it capitalist mythology? Is it working really hard will get you really far, or is it working smarter, having 10 businesses that'll get you really far? Which one is it? Is it your appropriation of capital and labor that does it, or is it your really hard earned, labor and your work that makes you that billionaire, that dream? There's a whole bunch of conversation stuff you can talk about these contradictions in capitalism, but this reactionary mode of thought preserves that. I would say this second bullet point is history appropriated. This reactionary mode of thought looks at history and says, this is written by the winners. This is rewritten by those who are still alive. And it is history appropriated as not to regard history as something to learn from, but history as something to make of from themselves. The reactionary mode of thought looks at history not as something to learn from, but as something to meddle with, to make something at which it is not, in order for it to fit within the schemes of life appropriated for the, in this case, the liberal mode of thought in this liberal society. Karl Marx's base superstructure, I would say it is a superstructure of society. And the base superstructure relationship is the base is the mode of production. It is how people produce and how things are distributed in a society. And the superstructure is your culture, your sciences. For the nowadays, it is the Grammys, the Met Gala, it is the movies, it is the celebrities, right? Your superstructure. It is the ha-ha hee-hees, your memes and laughs, and which we all need to enjoy ourselves within. But you have to understand how these come about and how our superstructure, how our cultures emerge from our processes of production. Because when we produce, things happen. Nothing can happen without things being produced, especially in the base mode of production. How our relationship with our labor and how our relationship with capital is within the shared material condition, right? So if our production, which it is privatized, in which all of the means at which we can produce are privatized, the schemes of privacy bleed into the superstructure or bleed into the culture of society, and which makes it this private scheme, which makes this inherently individualistic, which makes it inherently non-cooperative and non-community, right? This schemes of privacy, this private kind of, lifestyle, this individualism, this I, me, this, we don't need community. I just need a bigger bag. I just need to chase that bag, get a better job, and, provide for myself, because that's just what the system provides. It is a very backward system. That's right. That's correct. It is insanely backwards, but we only know direction because of what we know it not to be, right? Individuals moving forward step by step perceives themselves as moving forward, but each step from another angle, from another perspective, could be backwards. And in this case, it is. But when you move, quote unquote, forward, each foot follows the step after another, perceiving this forward movement. But the direction that you are taking could or could not be forward. And the system being backwards, people are moving step by step in front of them, even though they are moving backwards, right? Or backwards in the terms of building community, backwards in the terms of, attempting to, socialize our production, establishing the non-reliance of community, which is where we need to build our reliance. Because if not our reliance on the community, then where else? It is, of course, the reliance of corporations. It is, of course, the reliance on private enterprise and businesses, rather than, of course, the public enterprise or the community providing, right, interests that would be able to take care of you, right, regardless. And this is where we get solidarity. The people, the community at large, or your community at hand, which you are experiencing with, could provide for you and you could produce with. However, our mode of production privatized does not allow us to do so because of how we organize our labor in the ways which makes the scheme of our labor and which makes the scheme of our business and how we, produce and materialize stuff, what we come about. This reactionary mode of thought only allows individuals to think reactionary, to be reactionary, and therefore to materialize reactionary, liberal, kind of bourgeois institutions, right? So this antagonizing nature is inherent to this reactionary mode of thought, this capitalist mode of thought, just thinking of individualism and privacy. History appropriated is no more than just this application of privacy, this uncovering and hiding up, this doctoring of history as it, versus what it is versus how it is told, right? Shout out to the CIA doing all this, meddling with their history, of course. But this reactionary mode of thought, I won't say based in principle, but it is based in this understanding of not being principled, right? Liberalism seeks to destroy the principled base of our understanding because, as a liberal, as an individual of this privatized reactionary mode of thought, you think, therefore you are. So there is none of this need for any mode of thought that allows for you to think analytically, analyzing scientifically, is because you are here. Reactionary mode of thought tells you with your liberalism that you are a being that is free. You are a free person and you could do whatever you want. And so unless, you break any laws, and therefore you're not, right? This is basically how it goes. And then, of course, you're supposed to know the law. You're supposed to know a lot of stuff. You are given all these resources and tools in our shared condition in this American society, right? If you're in America, and you are just thrown to the wolves in a sense. You are given this good luck in life, and especially after you turn 18 in most family households, right? After you turn 18, boom, individual. I'm a free grown person. I can make my own decisions. I can do all this. I can vote and do all this. I'm granted all these freedoms. I'm a free expressing individual. Now I got to go clock and work it every single day for the next 40 years, right? Like, are you really a free individual if you are subjecting yourself to this type of work? And this is not to bash anyone who does that 9 to 5, because in the material conditions shared, in the ways that the world works, it's kind of hard to quit your job outright to support a strike, or it's to support and build your community. One, because there is no structure in place. That's intentional. And two, there is no mode of thought rallying our troops, rallying the people to come build community. That is also intentional. So it's hard for an individual to quit everything that they're doing and then pursue the structure that we seek to build. And that's on purpose. Not one single individual is supposed to be doing that, right? Great man theory, it's a little bit of a theory. Great man theory is this, the George Washingtons of history when he did the revolution, right? The bourgeois revolution, or it's the Alexander the Greats. It is the kings and queens of different nations and feudal systems. It is, the one person is the Isaac Newton's great man theory. It's single people of the world that make our material conditions shared, which of course, obviously very much not true. It is the entire capacity of all the labor contributed by society, by all the peoples that make the history, right? It just happens to only be one person with a name and a face at which we attach it to, but that attachment doesn't mean that all of that materialization comes from that single individual. You think George Washington went down and saw every redcoat and be like, yeah, I'm taking all of them down, right? So everyone contributes to society equally. Do you think, I use this example a lot, do you think the Walmart CEO goes in and rings up every single customer, stocks every shelf, and organizes the back? I don't think so. I would wager against that the CEO of Walmart does any of that, right? I would wager against it. I'm pretty safe making that wager because they don't. CEOs and these billionaires, these business owners, the capital owning individuals do not labor. And there's a whole conversation to go about this non-labor, this leisure class, this dispelling of labor, this disgust of labor, this removal of labor and such. But another conversation to have. Back to the reactionary mode of thought, history appropriated. Right. This reactionary mode of thought is dominant because of how action it is. Notice how, when our left spaces, we talk a lot, and I'm, guilty of my own crimes. We talk a lot and yap, and yet nothing happens. It's just like Malcolm X. We are not outnumbered, we are out organized. And so, and our out organization comes from this delay, or it comes from this, talking and speaking of our political theories, of our, our such and suches, our this, what ought to be, what not to be in these specific types of theories. Should it be anarchy? Should it be anarcho-communism? Should it be communism? Should it be any sort of detachment and cap, whatever and whatnot? Should it be any of that? And this is where that out-organizing comes in. That's where that quote's very prevalent. We're out-organized because we're stalling ourselves, I would say. There's a lack of action. However, on the right, since it is reactionary, the reactionary mode of thought, it reacts. There is no thinking. They just do. And why do you think that we live in such a world that we do? Because the people that do. The people that think don't do, because we think, right? It is very slow, right? This revolution is a slow thing to materialize. And so we may not need everyone, right? That's why there's a division, left and a right. The right, obviously, this pro-capitalist, the left, this anti-capitalist. There's different schools of thought, these modes of thought, these schemes of thought that build within the material conditions shared. Because if you live in a certain area, you're going to do a certain thing, you're going to think a certain way. If you live in another area, you're going to do another thing, and then think a certain thing another way, right? We all live different lives. We bridge these gaps by our language, conversation, our art, our expression, our ability to communicate with one another. That is how we bridge these gaps. So always keep those conversations open. And now finally to the last bullet point. 3.5% is not 100%. And it's a very small percentage of 100%. Because ideally, as you want to think about it, America split 50-50, left and right. But like the bourgeois left and right, like liberal and conservative, right? That's rough metric. It's not entirely true, but it's 50% of the left versus right, and you're liberal, conservative. That is the demographic of, America. We only need 3.5% of that 100 or that 7% of that 50 to get a movement going. And this is the core tenet of GSUS. It is that 3.5% makes a big change, and then 3.5% doing stuff makes that big change, right? Because 100%, 80% or whatnot, this large percentage is out there doing stuff, but doing stuff for bourgeois interests. Waking up, going to work, spending money, consuming, go to sleep, wake up, go to work, spend money. Because there's a cycle of this. Majority of the percents are doing this because that is the scheme of life at which allotted by the capital interest to, materialize. Capitalism needs people to consume mindlessly. Capitalism needs to produce mindlessly. And capitalism needs everyone to, think that everyone else is an enemy. And this is rooted in individualism. Breaking down that individualism will help us, but this does not help the fact that people are fallen within the schemes of consumption and the scheme of your bourgeois lifestyle. This consumption, this producing, both mindlessly, right? You can strip away the individual from individualism, but this does not remove them from the material condition. People need to live. And this is where we get our, effective conversations going, if you can get people that far, right? Because most people will stop at you at like, wait, hold on, politics bad, don't want to talk about it, that's toxic, don't want to, just get away from me, politics bad, boo. When individuals mostly referring to their bourgeois politics, and when I say 3.5% isn't 100%, this is that call to dismantle your idea of bourgeois politics. This is what builds solidarity. But of course, 3.5 ain't 100. We don't need every single individual that we come across to like what we're doing, to be support and, have what we're doing. 3.5 is very small compared to 100. It's not a very big number, but when we consider that 3.5 of the US population is around 11, 12 million, that's a lot of people intentionally doing stuff towards a strike. Now, things could happen, right? And the research based off Eric Chenoweth reveals to us that you don't need a lot of people to make a very big change. Change in movement comes from people doing stuff. What do you think is going to happen? 50% of the population who doesn't do anything, maybe a tweet here or there, maybe going out to having one conversation or another here and there, but is it really going to be 50% of lack of action, or is it going to be a smaller percentage, in this case 3.5, with intentional action, with labor invested into structures and building a system, right, that is for the people? It is something principled, based and rooted. 3.5% can get a lot more done when they do it intentionally with tools, collaboration, as we're doing here, decentralized cell model type of organization, versus 50% of just not doing much, just 50% of just going to work, maybe attend a protest, but don't get anything out of it, and going back to work, spending more money on Amazon and consuming, right? This intentionality is not going to be a switch overnight, right? So it is going to be that this gradual divestment of the system. So instead of spending money at Amazon, go turn towards your local shops, the businesses that are owned by the people who live right next door in your neighborhood, right? They're the business owner next door, could be driving every day to work, but that work is to provide for the community. Spend your money there, right? And if you don't have anyone there, do you have other options, right? So even if you do still shop at, these places, a boycott will only just redirect back into the system. A boycott, unless done, strategically, is just going to reinvest back into the system of capital, right? Because even if you don't shop at Starbucks, you're going to shop at another coffee shop, but that other coffee shop still exists within and supports the relationship, exploitive, the boss and employer relationship. But, don't get too critical. If you still want your coffee, you could either make it, go to somewhere that, supports ethical causes and such, if you can find such, but do everything that you can. We're not all perfect, and we all can't do everything, as righteous or, as great as we want. We all want to dissent against the system and strip our ways ourselves from it. But the system is so bled into the schemes of life of our individuals and our, in our lives, that it's almost, I would say, not impossible, very, very difficult for someone to just uproot themselves out of the system, keeping them alive. This natural divestment, or this gradual divestment, happens slowly. So maybe 1 week you are shopping on Amazon or Walmart or Target, Kroger's or whatever, your Safeways. And then maybe the next week you're trying out one day, going to a farmer's market. right? That's a step forward. That is something that you can do and make action right now to get yourself divested out of the, cycle of consumerism, right? Building community is intentional, but it can start with $1. You can go to your local farmer's market, maybe have a little conversation, but choosing to spend your dollar locally builds community, right? Even more so if you do it intentionally, if you actually go have conversations, right? I just had a nice, lovely conversation with a couple who sells just oranges. It's different types of oranges and mandarins at my local farmers market. I think they're fairly new, but it was a banger conversation. I didn't talk about politics. Didn't need to. They were already there doing their thing, providing for the community, and that's all that there needs to be. I didn't need to be up there like, you're doing this wrong. This isn't a Marxist organization. This isn't, you're not preaching the Communist Manifesto. None of that. Because if an individual and the farmers are there to provide for the community, that's pretty much all we need, to have our source of having, collective striking efforts. It's this intentional redirection of our, just not our labor, but our money as well. Because if we give our money back to the corporations and Amazon, all these other big corporations, then it trickles upwards. It cycles, and that's what capitalist individuals, the capitalist mode of production, these capital aligning, want out of the people, is to spend so that it can circulate back up or keep circulating out of the wallets and out of the sustainability of the individual people, right? We will need individuals to redirect themselves to local and community events and stores and whatnot. And this is what builds community, right? Your dollars directly invested into the people that, live next door, that is going to be much more fruitful than, going out shop. But, not everyone has that access to a farmer's market. Not everyone has access to that thrift store, maybe an antique shop, maybe a local business. Not everyone has access to it, right? There are some small towns that I know, not all up in the woods and the forest, but there's like this big one Walmart, or there's like this one corporate store that has most of the jobs in the town. And so it's kind of hard in those areas. But when you go out and venture to other parts of the area, it's a little easier. But we have to understand that people exist within their conditions. We must do as much as we can, however we can. And this embodies the strike, right? 3.5% in 100, right? You don't need to be doing 100% of divesting, take your money off of Amazon, take your money out everywhere. You just do as much as you can. It's not incrementalism. It's you doing as much as you can. Is you doing you, right? There's no one's going to tell you that you're not doing enough unless, they themselves are not doing enough. That's like kind of a compensation. It was like, you're not doing enough. That makes me feel better about me not doing anything at all, right? So just do as much as you can. If you can't quit some of these things, right, let it come. I'm not here to antagonize you to be like, you're not doing revolution right. Because there is no one way to do revolution. You're not doing the strike right. There's no one way to do a strike, right? We all have the capacities at which we must do, at which we must become in the ways that we are allowed to, right? So if you can't quit your job, don't. We're not asking you to do that. As a part of a strike, and when we call for a strike, most individuals, right, work in jobs that are required by society to keep functioning. So the strike is not, this picket sign holding in fence, this classical idea of a strike, entirely reformist. It's something that we need to change, this idea of a strike. The strike is something revolutionary. It's something principled and based into the actions at which we commit and do. So our change in movement comes from a very small intentional percentage, right? Because I want to say most of us are followers, but most individuals like to seek an action at which is being committed. And if it's being committed by a small percentage, it just snowballs. And that's what we're seeing with the strike card right now. It's this snowball, but I think it's mostly a reaction, right, to the Trump presidency. But it's still a snowball. More and more people in numbers, as more we do our outreach and stuff, getting more people eyes on the movement, getting more people on this solidarity train, this run, for us to then materialize the actions of building community. Because first you need people for community. And if you don't have people, you're not going to build community. You don't have people. That's where we're at in our stage right now. We're building community by reaching out to people, right? We're reaching out to people, having these conversations, talking about our movement and strike, building our solidarity, talking about change and movement, all from a tiny percentage. It doesn't have to be 100. I know I said it a bunch, but 3.5 ain't 100. You're not going to like everyone. You're not supposed to. Right? There's a reason why they have a left and a right. There are many different ideologies and many differences in the ways we think because of the lives we live, because of the experiences we have, right? Bridging the gaps between individuals builds builds that community, it builds that, sense of connection. But if individuals not having it, they're not going to have it. You're trying to build a bridge while the other individuals, not trying to build anything, right? You can try and go to the individual, but if the individual's not going to walk the bridge, it's like kind of the horse. You can bring the horse to a well, but they're not going to drink. They're not going to drink, right? So 3.5 in 100. Don't worry about not getting every single individual, right? It's important that we get as many people, just not every single individual, especially when those who are critical against the movement that has baseless critiques. Good critiques are fine and welcome. I love when people correct me when I'm wrong, so then we can grow as people. But then having those critiques that are baseless is kind of a nuisance, kind of annoying. It's like, well, why are you here if you don't like the movement, right? So 3.5 in 100, we're about that, a little bit over halfway point. I'm going to go back down the bullet point list just to wrap us up. So 3.5 in 100, true. It's not, right? If we said the general strike needed 100% out of 100, we would be compromising everywhere. We would be baseless and non-principled, and we would just be able to do whatever we want and not be taken seriously. Because in one breath, we're like, down with capitalism. And then we're trying to align with the right with 100% of the population. Wait, guys, capitalism might be okay. Blech. So 3.5 in 100. Don't need to be, saying that we need every single person in here. 3.5 is very small, right? That's saying only, let's say generally 4. You only need 4 people out of 100 to join the movement for our group, right? So like, what's that? 1 out of 25? Well, 1 out of 25 people intentional building community, going out there, having those conversations to spark that movement. So you need a small number to do big things, right? When she says small size don't matter, tell her that 3.5 ain't 100 and 3.5 can do a lot. I would say it's mostly personality. But we go back to the reactionary mode of thought. We go to this preservation of contradiction. I would say this other part of the percentage that, we don't need to directly address right now, as the actions we will commit and materialize will address it themselves, right? So community and building, when we discuss human nature and such, and we're trying to come up with these conversations to combat this, criticism of human capitalism, human nature, and whatnot and such, this reactionary mode of thought, right? A percentage of the population we don't need to quickly and, hastily align ourselves with, but something to keep note of, something to address. 3.5 and 100, reactionary mode of thought is a part of that, other non 3.5. So we can safely be like, yes, you have your thoughts, you've lived your life, but, we don't need to be aligning with as such, because there are like-minded people, individuals who seek to build this community, who are eager. And we need to be spending our time to arguing with individuals who don't. We should be spending our time, and energy to seeking out individuals who do. That's the point of our outreach. Our reactionary mode of thought tells us who and who not to organize with at the ready, at the moment's notice, right? There are times where I've changed people's minds, and there are times where I haven't, and that's completely natural, right? I can't convert everyone, and the people I do convert, very cool, very swag, very happy. The people I don't, oh well, that's like a part of life. That is a natural occurring phenomena. Not everyone's going to agree with you. That's the whole point of why we're striking in this type of manner, right? We go to this history appropriated preservation of contradiction in our reactionary mode of thought is how we analyze. It's how we understand what these, phenomena occur as. It's how we can clock and pinpoint these types of, values spewing out of the mouths of these people. It's how we can clock that liberal, be like, hey, wait a minute, you're actually not a revolutionary. You're actually like capitalism by being brat and slay and cunty. I would say it's a memification of fascism. There's a whole conversation itself, but it's this, I don't know how to say it, but it's this reactionary mode of thought. It's this reacting, baseless, not understanding the schemes in canons as we started. It's not understanding how we go about our lives. It's what the life is made of, and then we must act. If something happens, we must act and run with it without giving it a second thought, without giving it any more investigation. There's no relationship analyzed. It just is what it is. Communism bad, brew, raw. You can't see me now, but I'm raising my hands like a big old monster. Raw, communism bad. That's how individuals perceive. And I've had instances and conversations with people who I utter, hey, maybe socialism is pretty cool. And they should stop right there. I'm gonna put my foot down. Hold on. And they say, socialism never worked. And I'm like, oh my God, this conversation again. I'm glad to have this. And those are the sometimes conversations that I have that convert people from, general conservatism to liberalism to, this general left anti-capitalism. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't. And this is just furthermore proof of that individuals live different lives, different schemes of life, different understandings and canons of living. What makes a living? What gives you and how do you live this life? Your schemes and canons. So the reactionary mode of thought falls within that private scheme of life, the schemes of privacy and such, right? So going back to that very top bullet point, don't worry, we're ending very soon. Cut a little short today. Schemes and canons, the what, the how, analyzing relationships, right? Our schemes and canons tell us the life that we live, not to its total entirety, but to a good chunk to where we can navigate the experience of life without having to wonder the thought, without having to guess at whatever is going on in our lives. And then we can look at our material conditions shared and understand that life is the way it is because of X, Y, and Z reasons, because of our historical analysis of the material condition, because of what makes the canons of this existing process, right? We can break down and investigate, have conversations, and understand our material conditions. No more do we have to just look at life and be like, yep, I don't know what's going on. Right? There is an attempt we can make at this investigation, which we could satisfy that question. No more should we be wondering, right? We should be questioning, but questioning purposefully and intentionally at how we, break down our observations. The schemes and canons of life, you could say it in many different ways. I just choose to say this. It could be the what and the how of life. It could be your appropriation or appreciation of life. It could be any which way, but understand that there's a two. There's a two that makes a third. The schemes and canons make the understanding, right? Schemes itself, they're schemes. They're the what. Canons themselves, they're the how. They're the process, the functions and actions, the verb. Both of them combined as the object, at hand, whatever it may be in your hand, or whatever, your phone or whatever, your mouse, keyboard, screen or whatever. Schemes and canons of the object in front of you makes that materialization, makes that being, makes that understanding of how this material condition is built and shared. So the schemes and canons, very important to understand. Maybe not those terms specifically. It just helps what's helped me understand the material conditions. But schemes and canons, however you want to look at it, schemes are the noun, the what, right? What's thrown at you. You name something, it's a part of the scheme, or it makes up that scheme. It makes up this what does that object or what does that phenomena exist as? And canons are the verb. It's the actions. It's what it does in the becoming process, in that doing process, at which makes it that thing, right? How does it build up and form under its restrictions and limitations of our, shared conditions, of the forces of gravity, the forces of, buoyancy, the air, the volumetric, density of the air in the room that you're in, all of these phenomena, these sciences and the process, the canons of living. That's what makes up the life, right? So schemes of life, what an individual exists as, canons, the verbs, right? Your actions, just helping you understand, get your gears turning to look at life from a different perspective, right? To help you understand life from not just a single understanding of which most individuals understand life from, but to break it down from a perspective at which considers a multitude of conditions, at which explains why things are the way they are, right? I would like to believe that everything is connected in some sort of which way. It just takes us time, and enough time will uncover that connection. It just is deliberate in that labor to intentionally uncover that connection made, right? I make the connection between oil tank riggers and streamers who switch on stream. Yeah, there's a connection to be made there. There is a connection between, fishers on the wharf and fashion designers in New York. There's a connection to be made there. It's just whether or not we choose not to investigate ourselves in uncovering that relationship articulated. But understanding objects as is with their schemes and canons is a good start to understanding that relationship, right? You take an object in hand, like whatever it be, your phone, could be a pencil, could be something, you're out and about holding stuff, a zine or a pamphlet in your hand. The scheme of that object, what it exists as in your hand, the feel, the touch, what you are experiencing it within the very moment, and then the canons of it. How was this object made? And specifically for zines, how was this object made, cut, folded, printed, designed, and such? How does it become into the object at which we experience now? To the scheme at which we attach it to when we denote its existence as the zine. What's the scheme of the zine, right? A little rhyming there, but we are at that 3-minute mark, right? I didn't have that much to talk about. Apparently, it ended a little bit short, but that's pretty much today's session. Now we're gonna be opening up into open discussion, conversation. If you have any questions, please write them down or come off mute and we could talk. And if you do need to go, please do. No one's holding you here. And these sessions are recorded, so this session will be up. Friday around noonish my time PST. So around afternoon time if you're on the East Coast. So, but with all that said and done, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you guys next week. Love having you all here. Please ask your questions in the chat or come off mute and we can talk. But if you do need to go, please. Love you all. I'm stop talking and then I'll be here for a little 40 minutes and then we'll do all that love stuff. So thank you. If you need to go. Questions. And yeah, thank you much. No, thank you all for being here.
I don't have a question, but I do want to say your dialect, your speaking skills are on point.
Oh my God, thank you so much. I'm trying to build that, and that's the purpose of these is for myself as well, is to build up that skill because I wasn't as articulate as before. But hearing that from you now really, and I'm not going to stop anytime soon, but it really covers me. Thank you so much for saying that. You're giving my little heart a little warm up.
I did speech and debate in high school for 3 years, and I couldn't do an hour-long speech like that without stuttering like crazy or tripping on myself. I gotta say, 10 out of 10.
Oh yeah, but if you look in the past recordings up on YouTube, I did stutter and whatnot. So it's a developmental process. I just did it right there. But it does take a lot of practice and coming on here every week to do that. So I still get butterflies and a little bit of an anxiety to know about and talk about because these are not off dome. I do pull the material from the bullet point and that bullet point from the from books and from articles and literature that I read and to talk about it and then articulate it. So it's really warming to hear that coming from you. Thank you. So here we have, first of all, I'm curious, what's your relationship to GSUS? So I am a organizer, facilitator for the Bay Area. When I first started doing this because I wanted to help raise the revolutionary consciousness of our people, just to get people's brains turning, getting that thought provoked. Because nothing is more detrimental to a movement than when people don't think. And then when people don't think, their actions become sporadic in a sense. There's no base or principle in it, in those actions that we commit. And to organize a strike and to organize a revolution, our actions must be based and principled. And this is why I'm here. So I'm the Bay Area organizer. I help do zines. I'm starting to make headbands. Boo, my webcam's not working. I made a whole bunch. I wanted to show them, but maybe next week. But my relationship to GSUS, I guess formally is that Bay Area facilitator. I do the zines and then here I help with the YouTube and then the political education. So that's who I am. That's what I do. You can see my face on the other recordings. Too bad not today, boo. Figure that out for next week. No, thank you. Yes, please have a good evening. If you need to leave, leave. Not holding anyone here. I'll be here until 5 or I guess, 8. The 4 minutes after, if we have no other questions, then we'll call a hard stop and then we'll be done with here. Everyone go about their days and lives. And then I'll do some editing and then, have this posted up and it'll be all great. It's like happens every week, just record, talk, yap, have conversation, and then let it be. No, I appreciate you. You are the reason why I do this. That's right here. Question. Yes. I've had to my webcam's not working. But yeah, I've had to, there's A big process. It is a big learning curve for me because even though I love working with my hands as a mechanic, going into zines, printing them in paper, there was a bit of a learning curve for them. Um, in order to not waste time and resources in doing it, just to get started, you're always going to come up with some waste. Like, don't be scared of producing waste. It comes with the process. And then as you get better, hone your craft, or get comfortable with the feel of the paper and you're folding and cutting with the zines, you'll produce less and less waste. I made my first pair of pants the other day. They fit great and all. I wasted about a yard worth of fabric, which hurt. That sucked. But it's a part of the learning process. If you don't, make that waste, you don't know what you are capable of, and then, you never find out what you are able to do. So, but when it comes to, paper products, zines, pamphlets as well, posters and whatnot, there are two parts to it: the design of it, how much paper you're taking up, and if you are making pamphlets or zines and cutting and folding, generally there's not that much waste since most of the design is going to cover most of the paper, especially when you have a full cover design. But you don't want waste, but you're going to make some waste, and facing that fear or facing that obstacle and overcoming it will just help you become more present and comfortable with making the zines or any paper products that you may want to. Oh yes, please. That was a clarifying question. Yeah. Um. Some people love them. Some people don't. Some people don't like being handed stuff physically. I just give them a QR code. Some people love being handed. Like, I've had people smile when I hand them zines because it's like people have never received something physical like that. Usually a link sent to them through text and email correspondence, but it's not a hit or miss. Majority of the time, you will get people conversation and smiles when you. Yeah, it's kind of nostalgic. It's like you've really never handed something, right, and you receiving it and you touching and feeling it. So in this digital age, I'd say most people are receptive to zines and physical media. Me, a lover of physical media. So it's pretty efficient. People will look at it and such. And our zines come with QR codes anyways. So, there's that digital aspect to them. But the efficacy of the zines and the paper products, yeah, people like them, especially around here in, high metropolitan areas. I'm from California, the Bay Area. Everything's digitized, everything's AI, and it's like disgusting. It's gross. Like, everything's everywhere. Technology, boo. Zines provide that physical application. And people love getting handed stuff, physical stuff. So yeah. Of course, that's why we're here. So we could speak, so we could talk. My favorite thing is yapping. It's one of my favorite things to do. The more I can yap, the happier I am. And then when other people are happy and being building this community, it's even all the better, all the more better. So cool. It is that 1 minute after, the questions died down. So this does end this session. This does end all this, happy, go fun, ha ha he he political time talking about philosophy and politics. But this does end the session. We'll be leaving now. You can have your conversations if you want to after. But thank you so much for joining us. Love you all power to the people. Long live the resistance, and make sure that you are well fed, safe, and secure, especially your mental fortitude. All right, don't break down mentally. That's all we have. Until we own the means of production ourselves, keep your mental up, brains up, and then gains up. Don't forget to work out, even if it's just a stroll in the park, stroll around the house, the neighborhood, walk, get active. I'm a part of this Marxist gun club. And then every now and then, a person in there will say, "Did you work out today?" A fascist did. And it really hits home, right? You don't want to be outworked by a fascist. So thank you so much for joining us. Love you all. Political discussion next Wednesday, same time. And then, of course, these are uploaded on Friday as well. So thank you. Blah, blah, blah. I never know when to stop. Love you all. Peace and love, and take care.